Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how top experts sell their ideas, their value, and their services. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want better clients, bigger deals, and higher fees. Well, you know him, you love him. He has been multiple times very popular guest here on the Selling Show. Mr. Duct Tape Marketing himself, John Jantsch, welcome back to the show.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I have a sneaking suspicion that you say similar things about every one of your guests.
I actually don't. What I sometimes say is, you're in for a real treat today, but I didn't say that today, John. So I don't know. I mean, we'll have to make the treat up, you and me, as we go along.
I suspect that'll be easy for us to do.
See, did I mention that John is a longtime guest? So we're ribbing each other right out of the gate. Right out of the gate. We are giving each other a hard time. Well, my friend, you have built quite the empire. I think the best place to start for this go-round is give us the entire sort of historical snapshot of duct tape marketing. I know it was, even before it was a book, am I right that it was a blog?
Yeah, and really, I'll just give you the spiel. It takes me about 3 minutes. I've got it down.
Perfect.
30 years condensed into 3 minutes. As I said, 30 years ago, I started my own agency. No real plan, just knew I could hustle work. And so I did. Got some big clients, little clients, big projects, little projects. I landed a couple small businesses and I really enjoyed working for them, but boy, were they frustrating. Same needs, challenges, never the same budgets or even attention spans that, bigger clients had. But so I really, at that time, said, look, I've got to create a whole new way to work with them. I'm going to create something where I can walk in and say, look, here's what I do. Here's what you're going to do. Here are the results we hope we get. And here's what it costs. And really almost trying to productize this idea of creating a marketing strategy, a marketing plan. Felt like I needed to give it a branded name. And so I called it Duct Tape Marketing. That was really the genesis. That was around 2000. People really loved that term. It really resonated with small businesses. And so, as you noted, I put it on everything. I changed the name of my business, certainly with my blog and website, and ultimately became my first book in 2007.
And am I right, John, that the Duct Tape Marketing blog, in one of its early iterations, you had contributors? It wasn't all just John. You invited other people to post on your blog. And at that time, that was kind of novel, right?
Yeah. Well, blogs were really still kind of novel, I think, in the business mainstream. I started the Duct Tape Marketing blog in 2003. And, there was a lot going on. I mean, the whole idea of people producing content, building almost a blog network, as blogs really started to pick up steam, became popular. And so you're right. I actually created a blog channel, as I called it. And so it wasn't just guest contributors. They actually had their own interface. It had their name on it. And, we just had like a channel of them. So I suppose in some ways it was a rudimentary, start to what has now become, a little bit of an accepted sort of media channel approach. I mean, probably more people doing it with podcasts today than blogs. But it was sort of innovative. And, again, I, was in the right spot at the right time and kind of jumped on the blogging thing. And that, frankly, led to a lot of my ultimate success because of the popularity of that particular publishing mechanism.
And then the book comes out, and then you're obviously flooded with work. And at what point did you have the idea, wait a minute, this is way bigger than just the John Jantsch show. We need to certify other consultants in this methodology.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. When I started Duct Tape Marketing, started writing the blog, I actually created a course. I saw the writing on the wall. This internet thing was going to happen and take off. And that actually ultimately made it easy for me to write a book because I'd already really written a lot of the content. And so the book was always in the plans, and actually a certification, network. I'd seen it done before by Michael Gerber. As a matter of fact, had his E-Myth certified consultant. So it was always on the roadmap. And like a lot of things in life, you get forced to do it and then you do it. I had people start contacting me saying, hey, I love your approach. It's different. It's what I want to do. I want to work with small business. How do I license that? Like all good entrepreneurs, I said, well, I guess I better build that.
Right.
So people can. So that was, I got pushed into writing the book. I got pushed into writing or creating the network just when it was time.
And then fast forward, once the certification program was mature, we're talking about hundreds, right? Hundreds of duct tape marketing certified consultants in the network.
That's correct. So we've had well over 400 go through our program. Today, actively, we also have a community. It's not just a training or a course. We actually have a community of licensed folks that collaborate now weekly, monthly, quarterly. We do in-person events together as well. So yeah, it's been fun to grow it. And I suppose that's our big differentiator, is that there are a lot of people that have a course, or some sort of training. And we've really built a community around folks that have kind of similar beliefs about how to do marketing.
Yeah, incredible. So people probably know about marketing. They probably know about consulting and consultants. The latest iteration of this is you have taken your expertise around the chief marketing officer and specifically fractional chief marketing officers and built quite the empire around that. So take us back to what is a fractional anybody, and then specifically what is a fractional chief marketing officer, and we'll start with the very basics.
Yeah, so break the terms down. Fractional, part-time, a fraction of my time goes to this company, this company, this company. That's kind of how people look at that. A chief marketing officer is somebody that's the advocate for marketing inside the organization. I mean, we didn't make this term up or marry these two terms. It's really been kind of a combination of things happening. Fractional everything has now become very acceptable, right? I mean, we can blame the pandemic on a lot of things, and this is another one, I think, where people have really adopted that idea of, I can have great talent, working with me from anywhere in the world on a part-time basis, to plug into just that thing I need. And I think the other thing that really happened in the last few years too is that we have a lot of people that decided they didn't want to be chief marketing officers for one company anymore. And they wanted to jump out and do their own thing. And it was quite logical for them to say, hey, I've got this experience. Maybe people just started asking me to do this kind of work. So, hey, I'm a fractional CMO now, right? And then I think also a lot of companies did get really caught by the pandemic, not having any kind of strategy. And so I think a lot of companies realized, hey, we have to start here with our marketing. Large companies have always had a C-suite, a CMO role. And I think that, increasingly you're finding smaller, I'm under $10 million companies who, 5 years ago would have laughed at the idea of a CMO, have now said, you know what, we have that function. We just don't need that person sitting in a seat, but we certainly need somebody who's bringing a strategic point of view, that's orchestrating our marketing rather than just having it happen as an event. So a lot of things I think have coalesced to make this profession, I guess is the best way to call it, something that is just really exploding. And in fact, Chief Outsiders, which does a lot of this kind of fractional type of network, did some research, and the fractional CMO has actually grown 60% in just the last 5 years.
Wow, that's really incredible. And just for context, I think maybe some business owners and maybe even some potential fractional CMOs, they are not aware of what a full-time CMO costs. So in my experience, and perhaps your numbers are different, but you're talking at least, even in a small company, $150,000, $200,000, $250,000 a year if you were to get a good full-time CMO. And good luck getting a good one, right, to begin with. So the fractional, it seems to me to have so many benefits. Number one, it is a risk mitigation strategy. It is a cost mitigation strategy. And you probably don't need 40 hours a week, depending on the size of your company. You don't need 40 hours a week of CMO, but maybe you need 10. Yeah. And that 10 would be a game changer for your entire business. So do you ever, with the fractional CMOs that are licensed under the duct tape marketing system, do they understand that they are literally selling dollars at a discount? Yeah. Because a full-time CMO is such an expensive and such a risky hire?
So the way I really look at it is it's certainly a cost savings, but the real way to look at it is it's a right fit. It's giving the company what they need. We surveyed hundreds of companies, and fully expected cost savings to be the number one benefit that they identified. And it was on the list. It was high on the list. But the number one benefit is we finally now have a strategic outlook, in our business. Because, most businesses that don't have a chief marketing officer of any sort, or the founder was, not based in marketing. I mean, they've typically grown the business out of the founder being pretty good at selling stuff. They've kind of plateaued because you can only take that so far. And there is no strategic marketing hire, at any level really in the company. So all of a sudden being able to afford what they really need now to go to the next level is really probably the greatest gift of this outlook.
Are you loving this interview as much as I am? Holy smokes. Hey, you know what this reminds me of? There's a fantastic sales book that you got to get your hands on right here, right now. It's called Do It Selling. How do I know it's great? Well, I wrote it and you need to read it. Pop over right now to doitselling.com. Now, back to our interview. Let's talk about who's the profile of a typical fractional CMO.
Sure.
Certainly, I know that we talked about, full-time CMOs might want to become fractional CMOs. Yeah. But I think it's broader than that, right? So it's agency owners, it's consultants, it's marketing coaches. Talk about kind of the variety of personas that might be a great fit for this.
There's no question. I mean, particularly in what we're doing, we are reaching a much broader audience for this. So the traditional audience was somebody that had probably been at a senior level, VP at least, or maybe a CMO in a marketing, role at a company, jumped out and said, hey, I don't want to work full time for anybody, or maybe I got fired. And this is now an opportunity afforded me, right? And they go out and they sell about a fourth of their time to 4 different companies. That's the most traditional model of, fractional CMO. And I think a lot of people quickly found out they might actually be paid pretty well for their time, but that's not a business you can scale. I mean, that's a business where you're going to walk in and say, okay, what do you need? All right, well, I'll mold my engagement to what you need. Okay, company number 2, what do you need? And what we are finding is that there's a lot, especially when you start going down to this under $10 million business, for example, they don't really need even a fractional CMO for them, to be honest. They need somebody who is going to bring them a strategic outlook and is going to orchestrate all the moving parts, or help them orchestrate all the moving parts in their marketing. So we are teaching, what a purist might call fractional CMO light, but we're actually teaching a model that is repeatable and scalable, and also helps an agency or a consultant really create a great differentiator in what they're offering the market. I tell you, the other thing we've certainly found is that positioning attracts the right client, somebody who believes in strategy, somebody who believes in a long-term investment in their business. And it also dramatically changes the relationship with a client. Most agencies are seen as vendors. And, they're doing this tactic or this package of tactics. But when you run somebody through a very strategic process that delivers to them something that is in insights about their business that nobody's ever asked them about, let alone delivered, all of a sudden you are a trusted advisor. And what you recommend now going forward, as long as you execute, is not going to be in question. And you can actually, in many cases, charge twice as much for the same tactics when they are couched in an accurate kind of long-term vision and strategy.
This conversation is actually making me wonder.
You want to join our network, don't you?
Well, that goes without saying. But to me, I'm thinking like, wait a second, couldn't I sort of multiply and amplify this? So we're talking about a marketing agency switching to be more of a fractional CMO. Have you seen in your network yet, John, have you seen a fractional CMO agency where the company now has multiple fractional CMOs working for them?
Well, yes is the short answer. That's really what our model is about, is being able to scale this. Because I think one of the downfalls to the traditional view of this is that all they're buying is your big brain, right?
Yes.
It's like, you get 10 hours of my best thinking, right? Well, that's hard to multiply in some cases. So what we're trying to show people is, what if you actually had scope? What if you actually walk into an organization, you say, look, this is what we deliver, as opposed to what do you need? Because they don't know what they need.
Right.
But if you walk in and say, this is what we do, and this is the result it's going to deliver, there's a great deal of that, whether you actually call them fractional CMOs or you just call them consultants inside your organization or account managers. There's a great deal of that you can now delegate to other folks in the organization. So it's not just they're attached to you, they're actually attached to the outcome. And I think that repeatable system that we license is really one of the keys to scaling this. I mean, we have folks that have 2 or 3 team members in their organization, and they're managing 30 clients under this model. Can you imagine, one person doing that where they're basically just selling their time? Pretty tough model to scale.
Wow. So let's talk about that, because that's truly fascinating. How do you get that kind of 10x leverage? I mean, is that just from the system? Is that project management software in the background? How do you juggle those 30 clients effectively?
Well, there's a fair amount of fairy dust involved, but once you get past that, it is the system. It is the fact that once you have a repeatable process, you can get very good at it. You can get very efficient at it. You can actually delegate. And here's the real key. You can actually deliver more value to a client because of that, repeatable process. So it ultimately is far more profitable as well, because deliver a better result and you can charge more. So there's a lot of things going on. I'd be the first to admit our model is a bit of a hybrid between an agency and a fractional CMO. And so we've taken the account manager, the lead consultant, those kind of roles that you might have in a typical agency, and we have built them into this model so that it is scalable, because there are things that you can pass to other folks. As you get more clients, you can then, repeat that structure by adding more of those roles.
I'm also curious, this is somewhat about the offer. So when you said, here's what we do, as opposed to, hey, what do you need? And it's kind of reactive, catch as catch can. Here's what we do. To me, this sounds like if I was on the receiving end of this offer, I would hear about it and I would say, oh my God, that's the answer to my prayers. Right. That's what I've been looking for. That's what I need. I hope you can take me on. When can you start? Yeah. Is it that powerful?
I mean, you obviously know a lot about selling, David, and it is, when you can simplify something to a result that somebody can understand, that you can explain easily, that has, here's what you get, here's what I, here's the price. It certainly makes the sales conversation easier. I'm not saying that, nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to go buy some strategy today. So obviously you have to really do a lot of connecting, where they have the gaps with what that equates to. But absolutely. And one of the things that, of course, helps simplify that sale or maybe amplify that sale is that, there are a lot of people selling smoke and mirrors out there under the name of marketing. And a lot of people have been burned because they didn't know what they were going to get. They got a report every month at the end of the month that meant nothing to them. And so I think, making marketing a little more tangible, or making strategy, heaven forbid, a little more tangible, I think really does help the sale, no question.
Yeah, for sure. Now, tell me a little bit, as a duct tape marketing certified CMO, I have the system, I have the methodology, I have the frameworks and the tools. For the buyer, for my client, what's the balance of brains versus brawn? Because I'm imagining when I hear fractional CMO, it's like, oh, I'm renting a big brain, but we still need to implement. We still need to put these things in place. Do I have to hire additional team to work with my CMO? Do I already have people in place that might be able to do some of this work with and under the CMO that we bring in? What's the balance of brains versus brawn?
So there's 100 ways you can slice that as a model, I suppose. There certainly is a share of the market out there that has some team. They just don't have anybody who knows what to tell them to do. Right. So, there is a model that works managing a person's team, or maybe even helping them build an internal team and then continuing to manage and coach, them in that kind of role. And we've certainly done that. A lot of the folks we end up working with, they have nothing, or they have the social media person, on staff, right? And still nobody's telling them what to do. And so what we teach, or at least in our program, we teach a lot of our consultants to build a partnership network. I don't think I shouldn't say anybody. Our model is a little different in that we don't believe that you should have that SEO person and that content person on staff, but that you should actually see all of those as, building partnership bench that you can manage, and you focus on having team that is really client facing and project managing. And then there's a world out there available to you, resources to get websites built and, all of the kind of blocking and tackling stuff, but we just manage it all. We've actually built a pretty robust partner network. That's part of our program, is that when people join our program, they also get access to a whole bunch of people that can do the work under the model that we propose.
Wow, that's really cool. So it's kind of a certified directory of other specialists that the CMOs can call on.
That's right. And they're not just vetted. I mean, at any given time, maybe 24 people in our network are working with them. They really understand what our model calls for. And I think that simplifies the process, because we've all done that, right? You try to partner with somebody and there's like this 3-month getting to know you, like this works, this doesn't work, I need you to do more of this. And sometimes it's a bust, right? And so to actually be able to kind of get that out of the way confidently is real helpful.
Holy smokes, so much value in this episode. Listen, if you are loving what you're hearing, feel free to download, subscribe, tell a friend, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to The Selling Show. Now, back to the interview. Let's go back to the research, because you mentioned that you did this very in-depth research with not only CMOs, but with the clients who've hired the CMOs. The good, the bad, the ugly, what they were hoping for, what they ended up getting. Talk to us about that research some more.
So I mentioned the idea that the benefit to the buyer, they identified certainly cost savings, but also this idea of a more strategic approach. One of the things that I always find interesting, and I imagine you'll relate to this, David, the clients said that what they were really looking for in a fractional CMO is somebody with deep industry knowledge, right? Have you worked in my industry before? And what the fractional CMOs said is that, that was way down the list, that actually diverse industry knowledge was actually more important, which I believe is accurate, quite frankly. But it's funny, the disconnect between the two, because we've all seen many clients that, believe, oh, if you haven't worked in my industry, what value could you bring me? And then there's these people that are so niche down that that's all they do. Well, guess what they bring you? They get the same warmed over stuff everybody else is doing. So that was probably one of my favorite. Another interesting finding was that the amount of years of experience that folks had in marketing roles, we didn't actually say fractional CMO role, but just marketing related roles. The average was about 16 years of folks that are fractional CMOs. And I think that that's, in some ways, I'm sure that number is coming down as more and more people jump into it. But that's one of the numbers we're trying to impact, because I believe that, if you're working with a market that's not terribly sophisticated, you can bring them a lot of value without having 20 years of experience in senior marketing roles. In fact, I think in some ways that can get in the way. Somebody who's actually in there in the trenches working with your size business, working with entrepreneurs, is probably going to be more useful to you than somebody that's sort of overeducated, if you will.
Yes, absolutely.
Doing air quotes for those of you that are just listening.
Right. Well, around this diversity of industry experience, I'm seeing yet another benefit of this fractional model. And I've had this conversation with some of the agencies that we've hired. So I say, okay, well, you're going to get to know our business. You're going to get to know what we're looking for. But I'm hoping that you're also going to bring some expertise from the other clients that you're currently working with
100%.
And bring that to bear to help us. Yeah. So if you did an experiment over at client A and it was a total disaster, you don't need to do that experiment here, because it'll be a total disaster. And if something worked really great, what's our version of that same strategy or that same initiative that worked really great? So talk about sort of like the on-the-job cross-pollination that happens.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely spot on what you identified. I think another thing that's maybe same thing you were saying, but a little different variation, is that there are practices that we just don't do in this industry. Don't know why, but they're really effective in other industries. And that person brings it. And great example, early on, we talked about blogging. Well, we had a couple of very large remodeling contractor businesses that, they weren't blogging in the early 2000s. But we brought that to them because we said, no, this is coming. This is going to be huge. This is a great differentiator. At first, they were like, that's stupid. Now they are not saying that. So I think that's another thing. There can be entire, tactics or channels, that just aren't seen as viable in an industry that, might actually surprise you as a pretty great innovation.
I know that you mentioned that, having the SEO person in-house, having the content marketing person in-house, that's not necessary. But I am curious, are there some, 2024, are there some marketing go-to strategies that most of the CMOs in the network are relying on? For example, video, podcasting, whatever it might be. Are there some greatest hits 2024 edition that folks listening should really be looking at?
Well, I mean, everybody, has to pay attention to, effective websites, content, SEO. Those are the three really biggies. I mean, I would put video, frankly, as just a form of content. And so, you have to actually know what's going on there. You have to be able to innovate in there. Obviously, let's throw AI, into the mix right now. That's obviously impacting all of those channels. So I think those are the three biggies. Then we can go into all kinds of little, sub tactics, under those. But those, that's going to make the framework of marketing. I don't care what kind of business it is today, certainly from their online standpoint, and strategy really is, sits above all of that, right? So if you've got at least that piece that you can, change with, evolve with, stay on top of, because that's another part that I don't think enough people, think about. But the CMO hopefully is R&D, for marketing as well. And so staying on top of what's new, what's coming, what no longer works, those are big pieces of it. So that's a long-winded answer. Hopefully that gave some value. But those three components, certainly you have to have your team rock solid on that and have a point of view that you believe, is how you deliver on those.
Yes, I love that. And if I was to put those three into three buckets, macro level, strategic level, it would be findability, visibility, credibility.
Totally.
Right? Those are evergreen. Those are never going to change.
That's right.
That every company, every business needs to have the sources in place of findability, visibility, credibility.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's more accurate description of the customer journey. And that's, when a lot of people talk about like all the changes in marketing, I've been doing this 30 years. And the thing that's changed the most is how people get to buy now. It's probably changed more than, we have all these platforms and buzzwords and things that we have to think about. But what we really have to think about is how do we take somebody, down a customer journey of behaviors they want to go on? And that I don't think will ever change.
And I think you mentioned something early on, and this has been true, of course, throughout the entire duct tape marketing brand, is strategy first, strategy first, strategy first. So I'm imagining that these CMOs, one of the most fun parts of their job must be telling a business owner things they do not need to worry about, right? The trends, the buzzwords, the TikTok, the whatever. It's like, you know what? If we're selling to people who are 50 plus, do not worry about TikTok. TikTok is not for you, right? Your buyers are not there. You got to fish where the fish are. So part of the CMO's job is to be a focusing influence, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things, once you develop this trusted role, I think that's one of the things that business owners enjoy the most about the relationship is that you're going to tell me what not to do. I can trust you when you say we don't have to be chasing this, that, and the other, because that's probably the most frustrating thing for business owners right now is they just in, both ears, they're hearing, do this, do that, do this, do that. And it's just, if somebody comes in and says, you know what, here are the 4 things we need to focus on, we can forget about those other things. Now, another role, and this goes beyond your question, but another very, very key role, a traditional CMO inside of an organization, in the right healthy organization anyway, is looked as the advocate not only for marketing, but for the customer. That's telling the CFO, no, we can't cut corners here because that delivers a bad experience, right? And I think that role is completely missing inside of most smaller organizations. So to me, the going in and talking about, how people buy here, how we retain them, how we generate referrals, kind of what after somebody becomes a customer, somebody who's advocating for the experience is really how you expand this idea of marketing inside an organization.
Well, let's talk about, I think we have a resource or a gift for folks that want to learn more about this magic world of CMO. And also, I think you've got some amazing tools and some frameworks and some things that are super helpful to folks. Where can we send them to learn more?
All right. So the easy place to go is to ducttapemarketing.com, DUCTTAPE marketing.com. If you are thinking, hey, you know what? I need somebody to come into my business and be more strategic. You can find all the resources for, how you would hire a fractional CMO. And then if you are agency consultant, somebody who wants to get out of the corporate race, you can also find all the resources for becoming or scaling a fractional CMO practice, including you'll be offered right off the bat a 50-page ebook on scaling a fractional CMO practice that's full of a handful of actual tools that we have built that we use for things like KPIs and for developing personas and core messages, all the kind of things you would do inside of developing strategy. Those are just there free for the taking. So I invite you to come check it out.
Awesome. And we're going to put links to all of those goodies in the show notes directly below this episode at thesellingshow.com. John, before we let you go, if we were to summarize everything that we talked about the broad and incredible world of CMO hood, and how this is really sort of the turnkey answer to so many marketing headaches and sales headaches and growth headaches, what would your key takeaway concept that you want to leave with people? What would that be?
Well, in marketing today, selling tactics is a race to the bottom. And so you've got to find a way to really elevate yourself above the tactics. I mean, AI is making even some of those tactics feel at least, or perceived at least, to be, even cheaper. And so today, I think more than ever, businesses need somebody who can bring a strategic view. And it's just a great way to differentiate your business in what is probably the fastest growing area of marketing today.
Amazing. Well, John, thank you. There's so many value bombs. People will need to rewind. I know there's no tape, but you need to rewind, re-listen, absorb all of these nuggets, and then grab that 50-plus page ebook from ducttapemarketing.com, because it's filled with really, really smart stuff. No matter which side of the table you're on, thinking about hiring a fractional CMO, thinking about becoming a fractional CMO, or transforming your current marketing or sales or small business practice into adding a scalable CMO profit center. Lots of great stuff in that ebook. John, thank you for being a rock star. I appreciate you a lot.
Always great catching up, David.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.